is Dad?
I think Dad has made some excellent progress today.
Your dad, he's a fun guy, right?
And I love him so much, and I think he's the greatest dad in the world.
Welcome back to another episode of Working on the Dad Pod. I'm Ethan. This is Alex. Tonight's episode is going to be a little bit different. In fact, it's going to be a lot of bit different. It's not something we were planning, especially after last week's episode where we were talking about making friends as dads and adult platonic relationships. We learned on Sunday through our fraternity group chat that one of our fraternity brothers, we're only going to give his first name, Owen, passed away suddenly. We don't have a lot of information. We heard that it was a heart attack, and he was 38, which, is depending on birth dates, about a year-ish older than myself and Alex. And so tonight, we didn't really want to have an episode where we're talking about anything regarding what we think works as parents or anything like that. We wanted to pour one out to our friend Owen, and just kind of talk about how we feel, and the idea of someone that young dying of something that really shouldn't happen until you're much older. Did you want to say anything before we kind of get into it, Alex?
I mean, yeah, it's been something that I thought a lot back on that conversation we were having last week, right? Of friendships. And I think we talked a lot more about present day friendships and the friendships like yours and mine that have lasted for many years.
Yeah.
And this guy, Owen, he was someone, as we mentioned, we went to college with, and he was one of those, at this point, casual friendships where we were in the same fantasy football league. We chatted with him, at least once a year during the draft, and occasional smack talk in a Facebook group throughout the year. Some fun times, but he lived many, many states away from either of us, and sort of split his time and had quite a life. But he was not somebody that I saw except for the random encounter every now and then at a big football game. But it's still, and I think we'll get into this a little more, it still shook me. And I don't think because of the relationship we had, right? I'm not feeling the things that maybe I think I would feel if it was you or some of the other guys that we have remained exceptionally close with. But I think knowing him, knowing that, like, man, kind of wish I'd spent more time with him, and really the age, right?
Mm-hmm.
The age of everything, and grappling. I've got it in my tagline for you watching the video, but just sort of grappling with our own mortality. That it just, it wasn't a freak accident. It wasn't like, oh, there was a car crash, or there was some sort of freak accident like that was just bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. This was the body shutting down, right? And we talk a lot on this podcast about working on the dad bod, and how we often struggle with our own health, and sometimes doing the basic things, and it's been a lot to take in.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where I've heard reported in recent studies from various publications and everything that we can do all this stuff. We can work on the dad bod. We can do everything right and by the book. And sometimes it doesn't even matter. You just get unlucky, and shit happens.
Yeah.
And yeah. So Alex already got his drink ready. But I wanted to wait a second before I poured mine, which I just said to Alex. So I've got a glass here, beer glass, for those of you unfamiliar with glassware. And cheers to you. So Owen was a year older than Alex and I at Miami. He was on the pledge education committee when Alex and I were pledging. He was kind of the enforcer asshole role, and then as you'll hear throughout this episode, as we got to know him, turns out that was more of an act than anything. But he was the enforcer, right? He was the enforcer, and he when I was pledging made me do something called Edward 40 Hands. And for those of you who don't know it, it is a pun based off of the Burton film starring Johnny Depp, Edward Scissorhands, where you get your hands duct taped to two 40-liter bottles.
40 ounce.
Sorry, 40
liter.
Sorry.
Good God.
Yeah, you're right. 40 liters is a lot. That we're talking like a truck full of gasoline in Australia.
We're talking 12 gallons. We're talking fish tanks.
Okay, fine. 40 ounces each of Miller High Lifes. I do not drink Miller High Lifes, but in honor of Owen and that memory, which I'll get a little more into when you'll learn about what a softie he was, I decided to go with this local whiskey-aged stout 14% alcohol beer that's pretty heavy. So I think ultimately it'll be the same result in terms of how it feels on my stomach. But in honor of Owen, this is what I decided to go with. So, and you can see the darkness, the fullness of this beer. There's definitely going to be more than can fill in this glass on first attempt. There's still about, yay much in here. So, I'm gonna take my time with this one, but yeah. So that was actually one of that night when he insisted I do that as a pledge. The truth was I had gotten an extension on the assignment. I was not one of many Jewish guys in our fraternity, but he told me I had to do this. Well, percent. Would you say many? I wouldn't say many.
I would say compared to the population at large.
A handful.
I would say compared to the population at large, like there was sufficient Jewish representation in our fraternity.
Okay, fine.
Whatever.
Fine. Doesn't matter.
Minor thing.
Here. Yeah.
Owen was not a member of the tribe.
Yeah. Owen was not a member of the tribe. And he told me that I was doing Edward 40 Hands. He told me the night. And I said, hey, that is the night that the Yom Kippur fast ends. I will have just gone 24 hours with nothing in my system. 80 ounces of Miller High Life is going to destroy me. Can I do it the next day? And you know what? I expected no pledge. This is what you're going to do. And he just said, hey, thank you for telling me. I didn't know that. And I'm obviously not going to make you do anything that would hurt you. So yeah, we'll do it the next night. And, very small thing, but It was the moment he kind of let his guard down to me and showed some compassion and treated me like a friend and not a pledge. So, with that, I wanted to say, appreciate you, Owen. Cheers.
Yeah. He was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have much of a format here, so bear with us as we just talk about our friends.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be, I think a lot of feelings and maybe some random stories and different things.
Sure.
Like I have, I have a few enduring memories with Owen. Some of them I'm not going to post on YouTube.
Sure.
Like I will say when we were pledging together, he definitely had a history of like, that was the thing you had to do to earn his acceptance, was something related to alcohol. I drank one of those Bud Light Clamatos. I chugged it in a room with 4 others of our pledge brothers, and I came in second. Someone else.
I don't think I was there. I don't think I was there that night. Okay, good.
We weren't.
Good,
we were
good.
in his room in the fraternity house, and 5 of us had to chug these. And I felt really, really bad for the 3 people who finished after me, because it was the top 2 advanced, and the other 3 finished however many ounces of god awful beverage,
Gross,
and then got nothing out of it. But the other enduring memory is when we were pledging, you mentioned that he was sort of that enforcer of the group, right? And he always wanted to be a tough guy, but like he couldn't always keep it together, right? We do these challenges where we had a manual of things we had to learn, right? Obviously, you know all this, but like we had a manual of things we had to learn. And every week at our weekly pledge meeting, we get quizzed on it. And I was pretty good at learning this manual. And so I got every single question right. And he was like, okay, smartass, am I wearing boxers or briefs? And without hesitation, I said, that's a trick question. You're going commando. And his response was, you son of a bitch, get out. Like, and that's what I could tell, that there was a softer side to him, because not only did he throw me that question, but the way his like face just sort of lit up when I revealed that he was not wearing any underwear to the entire room. And he kind of laughed it off, but was like, what in the hell, you're psychic. Kind of thing. But that was kind of how he rolled. But after, that's all the stuff when we were first semester freshmen. Right. And he was lightly teasing us to not use the H word.
Yes, sure.
But I don't think he can get in trouble for that at this point.
No.
But I do remember after that, there were quite a few times, that second semester, our freshman year, where I would go over to the house to hang out with our now fraternity brothers. We were no longer pledging. And he was quite often in little breezeway we had at that fraternity house. And he was the kind of person that you could sit there and there was a grill there and you could pull up some cheap ass steaks from Winn-Dixie or Publix, and he'd sit there and throw them on the grill with you. Right. He was, he was the kind of guy, he loved grilling. Anytime we had any sort of social event at the house, he was the guy that had the stacks of Bubba burgers by the grill. And
a Texan through and through.
Exactly. And, just put him by the grill and get him talking, and you could have some of the wildest, best, like what I like to jokingly call deepest shallow conversations, where they felt meaningful, but it was just shooting the shit for an hour or 2 on end. And you just sort of look down at your phone and go, holy shit, I didn't realize how late it was. I got to get back, kind of thing. And, that's what I remember, most about him, that he was one of those guys that, like, again, wasn't super close with him over the years, but anytime I saw him 5 years, 10 years later, you could just always talk to him, right? You could
Yeah.
always have that conversation with him, where he'd find out like 4 or 5 years after the fact, like, that I got married. And he'd be like, oh shit, man, invite me next time. Right? Like,
Right.
just those kind of like mood lighteners. Like, I'm like, okay, next time,
Yeah.
next time I got you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sorry that I didn't get to fulfill that promise,
Right.
not to my wife, but
Sure. Yeah, he would always be the one that if he wanted to initiate a trade in fantasy football, for those of you who don't know, is an entirely online computer product, internet based, he would call you on the phone. And, I'd get excited to see his phone call because I'd be curious to know which one of my players caught his eye. But the first time he called me to initiate a trade, he said, hey, I'm looking to speak to Ethan Alpern's front office manager because we're men and men talk business on the phone. And I just started laughing because I knew that we were just about to talk fantasy football. And just like you, it was an opportunity to just catch up with somebody I don't talk to a lot. And, always genuinely happy to hear how life was going. He also turned into both a like public and private guy. His he over the last few years he became a scuba dive boat captain, and so you have to be roughly pretty public facing to do that. You're dealing in person with constituents. You got to advertise yourself.
constituents.
Yeah, sorry, your
It's not an
customers.
elected office.
I know. I'm speaking of. I got to turn in my ballot before Tuesday's primary. Anyway, he
You've got to be
was out there.
You've got a lot of people knowing some of the
Right.
areas where he worked and having been one of those people. I'm scuba certified. I'm not scuba instructor or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I've been on boats with people like that, and you've got to be pretty affable. You've got to be one of those people that can just strike up a conversation with anybody, even if you like speak limited English, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever language they're speaking. Because for some people, they are overcoming some giant fear of being submerged in the ocean with all the crazy things that could be down there in a tank that, the video has warned them if they rise too high, they could end up having to go to the hospital for decompression sickness, kind of things. And so it's both a fun experience, but you've got to be the right personality for that. So definitely,
Absolutely,
probably a testament to who he was.
Sure. And with that, he was also extremely private. In that, I'm pretty sure in the same conversation, and by conversation I mean random message in our 22-person group chat, he said my son, and turns out he had gotten married and had a kid.
Yeah.
So
Listen,
what makes this,
he surprised me like I surprised him, right? Probably should have sent him an invite me next time.
Right. And what makes this even harder is to know that there's a barely 2-year-old kid who's gonna be growing up without his dad.
Yeah.
And my last memory of Owen wasn't even really a memory. We talking more about this fantasy football league. He was that I was not once but twice kicked out of for a year to come back. You all saw the free throw shooting episode a couple seasons ago, but Owen was down to the final couple, and it was the day of the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, and he and someone else who ended up getting kicked out because they didn't do it had to submit a video of eating 10 hot dogs. And Owen throughout the day ate 10 hot dogs and hyperlapsed the videos together. And the 9th and 10th hot dog, his son was in the video. And he was also feeding his son dinner. And when I heard that he died the other day, I actually went deep into the archives of the football chat. And, you know, it was the last video posted in there. And deep in the archives. And I watched it again. Yeah. I watched it again. And I watched it with my wife. And it was interesting because, you know, my wife was both feeling for me when I said I lost a friend, but it was also, like Alex mentioned, a friend that I probably didn't talk about enough or very, very much. And so at the same time that I was expressing my feelings, I was also kind of just introducing him to her in a way at the same time.
Yeah.
But, you know, really didn't expect to be talking about him or anyone really for the reasons in which we are, because like I mentioned, heart attack at 38 is something you heard about 200 years ago, not today. So
I mean, it's one of those things. I mentioned this in the group chat that, like, you know, my dad was visiting this weekend when I heard the news, and frankly, I didn't bring it up in front of my dad. He's going to hear about this when he listens to the podcast. I told my wife my dad was sitting in the back seat, the back row of our car, entertaining my daughter, and so, and there was music playing and chaos, and so I don't think he heard any of this when I was telling my wife. But one of the conversations my dad and I were having, you know, he was talking about, you know, like a funeral he had recently gone to for someone that was his age, you know, mid-70s, and just earlier on Saturday kind of thing. And it's one of those conversations where it's like, I started thinking about, man, I kid you not, just having the conversations about, man, that's gotta be such a gut check when people your age are passing away. Like, how do you mentally handle that? And before the day was out, the universe said, why don't you try it on for size? Right. And you know, I spent a lot of the weekend, you know, enjoying my dad's company, enjoying my family's company, all that kind of thing. But my mind kept wandering. I was distracted. I was spending a lot of time like Googling his full name, the word obituary, like looking for information. I don't see a lot. Nobody owes me that. I want to be clear. If this ever gets back to his family, you do you. But, you know, I'm curious. You know, morbid curiosity. But like, just, and I think, you know, a small smattering of just like grief and closure. And I've had other people, and I don't even think you know this, I've had other fraternity brothers younger than us actually reach out to me to be like, hey, you know, what happened? Like, I'm hearing stuff through the grapevine, like it's sort of making its way. And just like, but the feeling I just can't get over is, I know we've said it a bunch, and I apologize if this is not good podcast material, but just, he was 38, right? And, you know, knowing that his heart gave out, right? Like, it brings up a lot of feelings for me, not just in the sense of like, oh my God, I can't believe he died that young. But for those of you who this is not your first episode, and God, I hope it's not, this is maybe not the one to get you hooked on this show, but if you've been here since the beginning of this season, at least, you'll know that I had a heart operation earlier this year. Right. And it brings back all those thoughts that I have, like it's hard when you're being put under anesthesia and having your heart operated on. The second time for me that I've been conscious of the fact I'm getting operated on. And both times it's, well, really third time, but the third time that I have just sort of been like, what if I don't wake up? Right? Yeah. What if I don't wake up? And the first time I was about 9, without getting into too many details, it wasn't open heart surgery, but they were operating on my heart, similar to how they did this past January. And then at 12, I had open heart surgery. And I think there's just some general fear of like, what if this is it? But this time, it's that fear of like, I felt it when I said goodbye to my kids. And my kids knew what was happening. My daughter probably understood it better than my son. And my daughter even saying things to me like, like, Dad, I'm a little scared. Like, Mom's talked to me about it. Gigi, my mom, has talked to me about it. Like, and my mom's been there through all of it and just like, said everything will be fine. But like, I'm worried it won't be. And, I have to, while sitting there, what I want to say in my heart of hearts is like, kiddo, I can't guarantee anything. But that's not what I said. I said it would be fine. I said I'll be back. I said it'll be no problem. And it ended up being right, because they had a 99.9% chance of being right.
Right.
But, it just hits you that it's like, okay, these are the kind of things you can prepare for. You can make sure you have life insurance. You can make sure you have a will. You can make sure you have, a living will. You can make sure that you just generally have a plan.
Yeah.
But that doesn't replace you or your presence in the world. And like, I am not the person, that I am the person who views my universal existence as a speck of dust on a giant floating orb in a huge abyss, right? Even though I'm religious and have those own beliefs about what the afterlife may entail, like I'm also pragmatic about my actual effect while I'm here on this mortal coil. And still, I also think about my family. And, it's a lot of things, right? It's fear of what will happen if my kids grow up without a father figure. It's fear of, how my wife will be able to handle it. She's a strong, smart, independent woman. Kind of pause on the independent because I think we've become more codependent over the many years at this point. But like, they would figure it out in the most basic sense. But it just like, and then on the, on the other side of it is like, what if it doesn't matter? What if it ends up not being that big of a deal, right? In the like very sad sense of like, what if I'm not even as important as I think I am? What kind of legacy am I leaving? Will people be sad that I'm gone? Right? And I know that people will be, but like, there's a lot of things that go through, and it brought all of those, to bring it back to this and this past weekend, all of these feelings went through me again of just like, what if this happened to me? And thinking about Owen's family and like how they're possibly coping with this. We don't know, we don't know a lot about the circumstances around his death. And as we've alluded to, we didn't like, I couldn't tell you his wife or his son's name without looking it up. And I'm not even sure I could find either one of them. He was that private. And so I have no idea, like I have no idea if it was one of those situations where he was the primary breadwinner, the sole breadwinner, or he was just doing the things he did because it was his passion and like that's the financial implications and like how much he was around because of his chaotic like work schedule and like all those things. I have no clue. I have no clue the impact on his family, but I'm like, even a little bit, that's tough. You know, that's tough for that kid. That's tough for his wife.
Yeah. I obviously have not had the heart surgery, but I will at some point because I too have a heart condition, and you know, every single thought you just mentioned that you went through, you know, I went through the same thing without the actual memories of having those conversations with my kids because I thankfully haven't had to have them yet. But you know, I too feel almost kind of like an asshole that I don't know his wife and son's names because he just never shared them. And I don't even think I don't even think I thought to ask. Like, you know, someone puts picture says like, look at me and my son. It's a little weird in the middle of like 23 people to be like, what's his name? Because you like kind of don't want to be embarrassed because you think that somebody else might know.
Yeah. I think on the flip side, I never felt bad about that, right? Like because he never announced it to the group.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a little bit more of, you know, I'm slightly more guarded with my kids in the public sphere. And I mean this on like a very, very large spectrum where you are slightly on a different side of a very large spectrum than I am of like guarding my kids. And I think in this fairly large group chat of which he was a rare participant,
Right.
I know the names of the kids of the regular participants. I also know that there are people that occasionally flutter into the chat that, you know, have kids, but I don't know their names. And I think I just sort of go, I chalk that up to, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm making myself feel better. Maybe I'm arguing with you. But like, I just sort of, you know, I'm like, I didn't feel bad that I don't know his son's name. I think maybe I did. And that's why I'm looking up, doing all the Googling to try and figure it out. But, you know, I just, you know.
Asshole and bad might not be the right words. Yeah. I guess it's more of just like the feeling like I now can't ask him about his son and how things are going and get the name. And I think that's really what I'm
it's like I always
feeling.
You chalk that up as like I meant to do that, right? Meant to ask him, like make a mental note. I don't want to say this in the chat with 23 other people, but next time he calls me about a fantasy football trade, I'll be like, what's your kid's name again?
Right. And I think the other thing that, you know, made this extra weird, and I say weird specifically because, you know, I'm about to get somewhat metaphysical or whatever here, but, you know, our friend says, did you guys hear about Owen? And then drops the news. And I put in the chat, I said, like, he was active in the chat yesterday. And I said, at least reading messages. Because if you scroll up right before, you know, you see his little icon indicating that he was searching through the chat. And he hadn't searched through the chat in a while. And I don't know if maybe, because like we don't have the timing of everything, you know. I don't know if maybe he was already dead and whoever had his phone, like, was just getting alerted by us or something and looking through, or maybe he was looking through the chat and like something I said killed. No, I don't think that, but just, you know, like it just, Yeah, that was dark humor. But he was looking through the chat, and like, what if one of the last things he saw was just like some dumb shit we said. So it just, I don't like to make like spiritual connections like this, but just very weird. Basically, not even recognizing his presence, even electronically, and then I notice it, and he's dead.
Yeah.
Just I don't yeah, that's also something I can't get out of my head right now. And I mean it's only been 4 days since we found out, so I don't expect myself to just like not be thinking about it anymore. And again, it's if it was like you or something, it'd be front of mind, like literally all I'm thinking about. But just my relationship with Owen, it's like I have to go through my life. I have to do what I need to do. We haven't found any information. I don't even know if like a funeral I've missed it, or if like there's something I can donate to for his kid or anything. But like, every time I get a second to breathe, or just like, that my mind isn't doing something that it's supposed to be doing, it pops in, just like, because like you said, it's partially like undeserved closure, because again, it's none of my business. But I have a hard time moving forward in a situation like this, because I just, not that our friend isn't a reliable source of news, but our friend's not a reliable source of news in some ways, because he heard it from someone
who,
he traced it back 4 people. So
and here's the thing, he traced it back. He was the 4th person in a chain that told us. Thing is, I have everybody in that chain's phone number, and I have declined to text them.
Right. I almost did. I almost texted the first person in the chain just to be like, hey, fuck. But at the same time, I'm just kind of like, I haven't texted her, it's a her, people, in years. And is that right?
I think
I don't know.
we're entitled, and like, I think I may end up texting her, but I've tried, and this conversation is helping me formulate that text. Like, I've texted her over the years. She still lives near our college. We've tailgated a bunch.
Sure.
We have a more recent text thread history, not robust, but I think we've talked about in our group chat about putting together some sort of donation fund, whatever, for his kid. And I think under the premise of that, like, I might text her and be like, hey, I heard through the grapevine that you were an earlier point of contact in this chain.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what you know so that we could get something going on that. On that kind of fund, to just a little something, that even if all it does is buy him a week's worth of groceries or something like that. I just, I'm like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I'd love to put together an Instacart order, with 10 hot dogs in it, or whatever.
Plenty of Bubba Burgers.
Case of Bubba Burgers and some Miller High Life.
For the baby.
Exactly.
Like in 20 years, you and me, kid.
Yeah, right. Save this. It ages.
Yeah.
Ages
really,
something.
really high life.
But yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, a couple of things it's reminded me of is really, I don't want to say like having your affairs in order, because I feel like for someone who's 37 years old, I've got my affairs as in order as I can have them.
Yeah,
Reasonably.
sure.
But I think on the flip side, it's really been like, I have a really big tendency to, and I didn't talk about this last week, but like I have a tendency to lose touch. And I think we all do. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
But like, especially with social media, because I'll be like, there are people that, like there was somebody who messaged me that I haven't directly spoken to in many years to ask about Owen. But I know plenty about this person because we are connected on all the social platforms, right? And it gives you sort of this false sense of like feeling like you're still connected to that person that you haven't reached out to. And it's like, send the message, see their post and just send the message, ask how they're doing, right? Keep in touch. Like there are two of our I live in a small little town, not that small, but it's pretty small. There are two of our fraternity brothers that live in this county. I haven't talked to either one of them in years, and we were never the closest of friends, but they were about like Owen to me in some way or another. And I'm like, I should reach out, just see what's going on, even if it's just grabbing a beer sometime, and it doesn't have to be the spark of a friendship. But yeah, it's just like that's been the big takeaway for me is like, don't just like isolate myself to the people in a specific group chat all the time to keep in touch with how people are doing, right? Both of these guys that live in my county have kids. I don't know their names, right? And you're just like, that's the kind of thing that I'm just like, yeah, I should say what's up, right? I should say what's up, even if it doesn't mean we're hanging out every Saturday.
Yeah. It goes on that, we talked last week a lot about how hard it is to both meet new people, how hard it is to maintain friendships, but also how both exhausting it is to put work into a friendship, yet lonely at the same time when, like, I'm just gonna straight shoot everybody here, but like Alex and I kind of do this because it's a play date. I talk about the millions of you that watch every week, but I'll be honest, it's closer to 999,000. Like sometimes we don't cross the million mark. But
it's just
yeah,
but it is a great way that like, I mean, we spend a ton of time just catching up after the show.
yeah,
There's sometimes where we'll talk for an hour afterwards about things that maybe we're not even sharing on the show, or diving deeper into certain things. And it's just, it's a great way to keep in touch. And I don't have those. And you expand it out too much. You make the group too big, and then it becomes a coordination issue. And then it feels like more work, right? Like you and me and two other of the guys that we lived with for a couple years, like trying to coordinate a weekend we can all get together on a trip can sometimes feel like a chore.
Yeah.
Our friendship is so strong that it is worth it.
Sure.
But like any less of a friendship, and I would be like, this is too much work, right? Like it's very clear to me that I'm like, but at the same time, I'm like sending the text, like sending the text, like
initiating the discussion,
just seeing how people are. And again, grabbing a beer sometime.
Yeah.
Because again, I just think about I think about all the folks that have passed through our lives over the years that I'm like, these aren't the people that, these aren't the people that are like my ride or dies. They're not the people that, I'm going to claim are my best friends in the world, but they are the kind of people that I would love to sit down and have a virtual beer or a real life beer with every now and then and just see how the heck they're doing. And it doesn't have to be more than that. And that could make a lot of difference.
Yeah.
Maybe not in my life or maybe not in their life, but it could just make a lot of difference maybe in the memories that I feel when they're gone of like, you know what? I stayed in touch. I felt like, I got to be a small part of the light they shined on the world. So,
yeah. I think that's a good place to kind of wrap things up. Not much about working.
Ethan dropped his mic, but yeah, I think we'll save working on the dad bod for another week. We'll save story time. I've got an uncompleted story time for next week. My baby girl is at her first sleepaway camp right now, Ethan, and I will let you all know how that goes next week.
Wow.
So.
Well, today was my daughter's last day of kindergarten, and we let her pick what she wanted for dinner. And like a true evangelical little girl from the South, which she is not, she chose Chick-fil-A. So, we went for it, and
as my wife
with
calls
that,
it, homophobic chicken.
Homophobic chicken, but damn, it tastes good. With that, to Owen, miss you, buddy.